going on, everyone? Mr. Octagonal here. Now, today we have my official 2019 NBA Draft big board. As you can tell, my voice is a little bit different. I've had a small cold the past couple days, but I'm feeling fine. It's just my nose is a little congested. Anyway, what we have today is my official big board, as I said. We're going to rank the top 10 players at each position, and then the top 60 players overall. And for each position, I'm giving a sleeper as well as a player who is overhyped. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. We are going to start with the point guard position. My number one point guard in the class is obviously Ja Morant. Most people would agree with me there. Morant is a very solid player, especially on the offensive end of the floor. Really good playmaker, very high volume athlete. He can dunk the ball, he can drive into the hole, he can shoot from all three levels. Solid shooter, and overall, he is a really talented player. I expect him to go number 2 overall to the Memphis Grizzlies, as I think it is a toss-up between him and R.J. Barrett. I think most people do think Morant is the better player, and I think it's pretty much neck and neck between the two of them. So, yeah. Next up, we have Coby White. Most people have it as Darius Garland, but I think Coby White is a better prospect. Garland, I feel like, is a little bit more unproven, whereas Coby White, we saw a whole year of him. We really saw him improve, and I think he was probably the most important player on the UNC team, even more important than guys like Luke May and Cam Johnson, as Coby White really did everything at that point guard spot. He scored the ball on all three levels. He's able to defend, hustle player. I think he does not have a crazy ceiling compared to someone like Darius Garland, but he does have a very nice floor, and I am certain that he will be a good player in this league. I'd expect him to go probably 6 or 7 to the Phoenix Suns or the Chicago Bulls. And then the number 3 point guard is Darius Garland. I did put him as a little bit overhyped. He only played 2 games this year, and his stock increased, which I don't get that. Yeah, it was sort of a down year for a lot of these freshmen. Many players' stock dropped, so he was able to increase his. And in those 3 games he played, he did look really good. He looks like a phenomenal scorer, but we've seen phenomenal scorers like Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard, who are great NBA players, but you cannot build a championship contender around them. Kyrie won a ring, but that's because he had LeBron on his team, and in his own squad in Boston, he really flopped. And then Damian Lillard, yeah, they made the conference finals, but that's because they had to play an OKC Thunder team who clearly was not as good, and then a Denver Nuggets team who was good, but has never been in the playoffs before. So you can't really win with your top player being a score-first point guard unless you have other superstars around them. And that's sort of my concern with Garland. His best attribute is his scoring ability. Not a phenomenal playmaker. He's not awful, but there are definitely better playmakers at the point guard position, and I just think he's a little bit overrated. Personally, I do expect him to go in that 6-7 range, maybe a little bit higher. And then after those 3, we have a massive drop-off. Point guard is a not deep position at all in this draft class. Those are the only 3 players I have in my top 30 on my big board, which says something. So my number 4 point guard is going to be Jordan Bone out of Tennessee. And this one sort of comes out of nowhere. Most people don't really have him on their radar, but Jordan Bone is my point guard sleeper. Really scrappy player, really solid player for the Tennessee Vols this season. Solid passer, solid scorer, solid defender. I feel like he's very well-rounded, and I think he could be a valuable piece off the bench. My number 5 point guard is Carson Edwards out of Purdue. He is a phenomenal scorer, and he can change games. I think off the bench he can have a nice role as sort of a spark plug, someone who can score the ball at will, especially from 3. Other than that, Carson Edwards is not the biggest. He's not the most athletic. He's not great at defense. But his scoring ability definitely puts him here at 5. At number 6, we have Ty Jerome out of Virginia. He can play the 1 as well as the 2. Personally, I think he's going to be more of a point guard in the NBA, as I don't think he's big enough to play the 2. And that's the main reason. He's a good enough playmaker to play the point, and I'd say that's one of his best attributes, as he was definitely the main focal point on offense for Virginia. Yeah, they had guys like Kyle Guy, DeAndre Hunter, but Ty Jerome was the facilitator, and I think he might be one of, if not the biggest players for Virginia, one of the most important players to their team. Not saying he's the best NBA prospect coming out of Virginia this year, but I do think he is a pretty solid player. Number 7, Shamori Pons out of St. John, bucket getter. That's all I'm going to say. That guy is a bucket getter. Number 8, Jalen LeQuay, coming out of high school, as he could have gone to NC State, however, he decided to come in this year's draft. I don't think that was a great move on his part personally. I think he could have been a first-rounder next year, and I don't expect him to. Very high-volume athlete. He has a nice ceiling, but he also has a very low floor, and I don't think he's going to contribute early on as he is quite raw. Tremont Waters out of LSU, really efficient offensive guard, and he's an overall talented player. And then number 10, Justin Robinson, another efficient offensive guard. He can play the 2 as well as the 1. Him and Nickeil Alexander-Walker were a very nice backcourt for Virginia Tech. And I didn't really go into as much detail of some of these later guys because they're... Sorry, y'all, but you're not as important. Now on to the shooting guard spot. My number 1 at the position is R.J. Barrett out of Duke. I didn't know whether I'd want to classify him as a shooting guard or a small forward, but I don't think he is the size or the length to guard guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard on the perimeter, so I'm going to list him as a shooting guard. Barrett is a very interesting player. We have guys like Zion Williamson, who you've never seen anyone like him, but we've seen players like R.J. Barrett, that super athletic guy who has a solid but inconsistent collegiate career with inefficient shooting percentages. We've seen it before, but I think R.J. Barrett is still a really good prospect regardless. A phenomenal scorer. He's not the most efficient, but he definitely gets the job done. He can drive to the paint. He can shoot the mid-range. He can shoot the 3. Yeah, his three-point shooting in mid-range is not where you want it to be. However, many great players do not have three-point shots coming out of college, and now many of those guys can shoot the 3 with ease. So I'm not too worried about his shooting, even though it is a little bit of a concern. But other than that, I think he is a great prospect. Number 2 is Jarrett Culver. I actually have him as my overhyped shooting guard. And if I had Barrett at small forward, he'd be my number 1 guy at the position, which may seem weird. However, I do think he's a little bit overhyped. People think of him as a top 5 prospect. I don't think he's that good. You need to hit the brakes and calm down. Jarrett Culver's not a top 5 prospect. He is a good prospect, though. Very solid 3-and-D guy. He'll contribute immediately to the NBA. I think he fits the modern game really nicely. But the reason why he's not as high as someone like a DeAndre Hunter is because Hunter was excellent in the moment, whereas Culver was not. Culver was not exceptional during the Final Four, and because of that, I don't think he's as good as everyone says. Number 3, Romeo Langford. He is one of the more polarizing prospects in this draft, and what I mean by that is ton of high school potential, sort of struggles in college, but you know the potential is still there to have him as a lottery guy, and I think he should be a lottery pick. Phenomenal scorer, sort of like R.J. Barrett. He can score from all 3 levels, but was not efficient at all last year, even less efficient than R.J. is. Romeo Langford does hold the ball a little bit too long. Very bouncy athlete. I've said he's similar to Donovan Mitchell. I've said he has similarities to Kobe Bryant. Not saying that those 3 guys are the same player, but they have some similarities, and I think Romeo Langford has a chance of having Donovan Mitchell's success as a rookie. I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Kobe Bryant. Number 4, Kevin Porter Jr. out of USC. When you think of boomer bust, that's definitely Kevin Porter Jr., as he's shown a ton of potential at USC, showed a lot of flashes, but was inconsistent. Minor off-the-court question marks, but the potential is there, and obviously he's an insane athlete. He can jump out of the gym, but I think he's more of an athlete, and at USC last year, he showed that he's not just an athlete. Yeah, his stats aren't spectacular, his efficiency isn't spectacular, but I think he is a very solid player, and I don't think he's as boomer bust as someone may say, but I do think he is boomer bust. I don't think he'll be an average player. I think he'll be either really good or really bad, and I do think he has the chance to be really good, and he has one of the highest ceilings in this draft. Number 5, a player with not as high of a ceiling, but a much higher floor. That is Tyler Herro out of Kentucky. And when you see Tyler Herro, you think of a white guy who's just a spot-up shooter in the corner, and Tyler Herro can do that. Phenomenal three-point shooter. He's going to succeed early in the NBA, but he's a lot more than that. Very explosive athlete, solid defender, and he can score on all three levels as well. And I think he's a pretty underrated prospect, and I think he has a chance to succeed very early on. Number 6, Nickeil Alexander-Walker out of Virginia Tech. A lot of people say he's a combo guard, and I agree. Phenomenal scorer, but he can also facilitate. He can play make, and I think he could be a really nice piece off the bench. He's gotten a lot of comparisons to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't think he's that good yet. I think Shai had an incredible rookie year at the Clippers, and I think he has all-star potential. I'm not that high on Nickeil Alexander-Walker yet, but I do think he'll be a really good player early on. Number 7, Keldon Johnson out of Kentucky. As I feel weird putting him at 7, but yet Jordan Bone is forfeit point guard. As you can see, shooting guard is a much deeper position in this draft class. And if Keldon Johnson is a lottery pick like 14 to the Celtics, that's not an awful reach by them. That's a solid pick right there. There are better players who could go at that spot in my opinion, but I don't dislike that pick. As Keldon Johnson, 3 months ago, would have been higher, probably top 10. His stock did dip a little bit. He wasn't as good at the second half of the year, but he's a very smooth player, really nice scorer, really nice athlete, and was debatably Kentucky's best player for at least part of the season. He's an all-around really good player. Number 8, Kyle Guy out of Virginia. He's my shooting guard sleeper. I really like Kyle Guy. I think he's a first-round prospect. Obviously, he was very productive in college, but I think he's more of a college player. 3-and-D, doesn't have the biggest size, isn't most athletic, but he can shoot the ball, nice defender, and the big moment for him is those free throws against Auburn. Obviously, he got fouled late in the game, questionable foul call, but his team is down by 1 right at the end of the game, and he just drilled him like it was nothing. He didn't look worried at all. He didn't look scared from the pressure. He didn't look overwhelmed. He just did it, and having those type of guys in the NBA, especially in the playoffs, I think could go a long way. Number 9, Miye Oni out of Yale. I hope I said that right. Very well-rounded player. He has a nice skill set. He can score the ball. He can rebound. He can pass. Solid defender. And I think he could be a really solid player off the team's bench very early on. And then number 10, probably the best name in this draft, if not one of, Luguentz Dort. Probably won't beat out Rodions Kurucs, but this is still a pretty darn good name. If you don't know who Rodions Kurucs is, he will not be talked about in this video. He was in last year's draft. But that's beside the point. Luguentz Dort out of Arizona State sort of dipped his stock a little bit, in my opinion, the past few months. But he does have nice potential, which is why he's here. I really like his upside. And he showed flashes at Arizona State. Does have some work to do, but I like his potential. Now we are on to small forwards. And like shooting guards, this is a very deep position. I have 8 shooting guards in my top 30 players, and I also have 8 small forwards in my top 30 players. So starting with the number 1 in this draft, I have it as DeAndre Hunter out of Virginia, as I'm the type of guy who really likes someone with a high ceiling and is more raw, rather than a proven college guy with a lot of production. That's why I like someone like Kevin Porter Jr., for example, as a lottery prospect. However, DeAndre Hunter is an exception. I think he is a phenomenal player. He's really grown on me the past few months, and I think he is a top 5 prospect, if not a fringe top 5 guy. I think I did have him as number 5 on my overall big board. Definition of 3-and-D, I think he fits the modern NBA super well. Is tall, he has nice length, he can play the 3 as well as the 4. Versatile defender, very good defender, probably the best perimeter defender other than Matisse Thybulle in this draft class. And then offensively, phenomenal shooter. And he's a poor man's Kawhi Leonard. I'm not saying he's the next Kawhi Leonard, but he has a similar skill set. Number 2, Cam Reddish out of Duke. Another polarizing guy, sort of like a Romeo Langford. Reddish has a ton of potential. We saw that in high school. He was easily the best shooter in last year's recruiting class among the top guys, or at least that's what we thought. And at Duke, he had a very inconsistent season, an inconsistent shot. And I think his shot will be underrated. I think he has a really nice jump shot. He is a really nice three-point shooter, but he was just inefficient. He didn't get the ball as much as he should have. He was the 3rd option, at times the 4th option on a Duke team, whereas for most squads, he would probably be the 1st option, get more shots, and his efficiency would be better. So I think this is mostly based off potential, but he was solid for Duke. Number 3, Nasir Little. I think he's a little bit overhyped. However, I still do have him at the number 3 spot. I think a lot of people view him as a top 10 prospect, or at least some people do. I don't, as he just doesn't bring it offensively. Not a great shooter, not a great scorer, under 10 points a game for North Carolina. He is a phenomenal defender, though, and that will be his calling card in the NBA. He's not a totally bad offensive player. He's not as bad as like a Matisse Thybulle, but he's definitely not good. He's definitely not polished. He does have nice upside, and he's someone who I think could develop an offensive game, and there aren't really any small forwards who are overhyped. I had to put someone, so I don't think he's as overhyped as someone like Brandon Clark, who we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But I just had to put someone there, and I figured he made the most sense. Number 4, my sleeper at small forward, Talen Horton-Tucker. Player comparison, Draymond Green. I see a lot of similarities in the two. Both of them are undersized for their positions. Draymond is like 6'7" at power forward. Talen Horton-Tucker is 6'4" at small forward, which is very tiny. But they're both very good defenders. They're both very versatile defenders, and on offense, they can be the main facilitator, the main playmaker. Draymond is the best passer on Golden State, and Talen Horton-Tucker is a really good passer as well, so I just see a ton of similarities between those two guys, and I think Talen Horton-Tucker is a fringe lottery prospect. Number 5, KZ Okpala from Stanford. Really nice season. I think he could be a really nice scorer off the bench, and maybe has the potential to be a starter in the NBA. Solid 3-and-D guy. I think he's a pretty underrated prospect. Number 6, Darius Bazley. He originally committed to Syracuse. However, he signed an endorsement deal, so he could get paid. Obviously, you can't get paid and be a collegiate athlete, so he played in the G League this year. And Bazley had a lot of potential coming out of high school. We didn't really get to watch him on the national stage in college, but I do think he's a solid guy. Fringe first-round pick. Very smooth player, really athletic, very smooth jump shot, and I think he can contribute at very quickly. Number 7, Cameron Johnson out of North Carolina. Probably the best perimeter shooter in this draft class. Really nice three-point shot, and that's the main thing about him. Obviously, we have transitioned into an NBA where you need to know how to shoot the ball, and Cameron Johnson is very good at that. Number 8, one of the most interesting prospects of this draft, in my opinion, Matisse Thybulle out of Washington. Yes, you need to shoot the ball, and Matisse Thybulle is not a great shooter. He's not a great offensive player at all, only putting up 8 points a game last year as a senior for Washington. But defensively, he is absolutely incredible. Over 3 steals a game, about 2.5 blocks a game. He is an elite defender. He has a chance to make all defensive team as a rookie. And when you get into the playoffs, defense is more important, and having someone like Matisse Thybulle can be really valuable for a playoff team. Maybe he's not as valuable in the regular season, but I think for a good team in the late first round, contending for the playoffs, who could use some defense off the bench, when defense gets more important, Matisse Thybulle can be your guy. Round 9, Isaiah Roby out of Nebraska. Very versatile player, especially on defense. You can put him in the perimeter as well as inside. I'd say that's his best quality. And then number 10, Admiral Schofield out of Tennessee. Had a really nice year this year for the Vols. Very nice scorer from all 3 levels. Has a very smooth jump shot. And I think he can be a solid player off of an NBA bench. Now on to the power forward position. My number 1 player at this position and in this draft class is shocker, Zion Williamson out of Duke. He might be the best prospect since LeBron James to enter the NBA draft. He is that good. And he fits the hype that everyone has given him. 6'6", 285, not the tallest for the 4 spot, and I don't really think he can play the 3, at least yet, but it doesn't matter because everything else makes up for it. Very underrated defender, very underrated passer, really solid scorer. And did I mention he's probably the most insane physical specimen we've ever seen on this earth? For his size, he can jump out of the gym. Phenomenal athlete. The only thing wrong with him is his jump shot. And his jump shot isn't awful, it's just not good yet. And he can develop it. But other than that, he is the perfect prospect. I don't think he's going to get fazed by the pressure. He's a team player. When I watch interviews of him, he seems like a smart guy. Doesn't seem like he will be a problem. Obviously, there are many top NBA players who want it their way or the highway, guys like Kyrie Irving. You could make a case for someone like Anthony Davis. And then in football, we've seen what that's done for guys like Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham. Zion Williamson does not have a diva personality. He wants to win, and I think he's just a perfect prospect, and the Pelicans might as well tell Adam Silver right now that he is their pick. With the second spot here as my number 2 power forward, I'm going with Sekou Doumbouya out of France. As Sekou Doumbouya is the best international prospect in this draft class, probably the only international guy going to the lottery. Extremely athletic. No, he's not the freak that Zion Williamson is, but he is still an insane freak of nature. Very raw. I think staying in Europe would do him well for a year, but I think he has a lot of upside. Boomer bust. I think he has a chance to be really good. Number 3, my sleeper at power forward, P.J. Washington out of Kentucky. Not really being talked a lot about, but I think he's a lottery projected, or he should be a lottery projected guy. Yeah, there's a chance he goes 11 or 12, but not a lot of people are hyping him up to go in that range, and I think he absolutely deserves to go in that range. Phenomenal player, as he fits the modern NBA very well. We have guys here like Jackson Hayes, Brandon Clark, who I've rambled about, who I don't think fit in the modern NBA well, and I think that this kid does fit the NBA very well. He has a 3-point jump shot, was very efficient from 3, and I think he can be a really solid stretch 4 right away, but he is more than just a stretch 4. Very good defensive player, very solid shot blocker, pretty versatile. You can put him at the 4 or the 5, and I just think he is a really good prospect. Number 4, Rui Hachimura out of Gonzaga. Didn't know whether I wanted to put him at the 3 or the 4. Played mostly at small forward for Gonzaga, but I think he identifies more as a power forward in the NBA. Don't know if he's quite the perimeter defender or quite mobile enough to play that small forward spot, but he's a really solid scorer, very efficient, grabs boards, solid defender, and he's pretty athletic as well. Not to mention, he is the greatest Japanese basketball player of all time. Yes, I'm going to say it now. I think he's the first Japanese player to ever be drafted in the NBA, which is pretty cool. So, Rui Hachimura, you get number 4 on my power forward list. Number 5, Luka Samanic from Croatia. Very high IQ player, has a nice frame, pretty solid shooter, very athletic, and he's not being talked about, obviously, because he's international. That makes sense, but I think he's a player who's going to be slept on, and I think a team in the late first round should take a flyer on him. Number 6, Grant Williams out of Tennessee. Very productive, can score the ball, can grab rebounds very well, really solid defender, pretty mobile for his size, and I think he'll contribute right away. Team player, and I think he's just going to help a team out early on, even if he doesn't put up the box score numbers. Number 7, Brandon Clark, the most overrated player in this draft class, in my opinion. I did put him as the overhyped player for this position. Shocker, shocker. I think he's a late first round, early second round guy at best. He's P.J. Washington, but worse. Yeah, he's a better defender, better shot blocker than P.J. Washington, but outside of the paint, Brandon Clark is basically useless in my opinion. He was very efficient scorer this year, put up like over 70% of his field goals, which is great, but all the shots were inside. That doesn't really say much. I could make 50% of my shots inside. Maybe that's a little bit extreme, but that doesn't say much. And he's not a great offensive player. He's a dominant offensive player in college, but I don't think that'll translate into the modern NBA. You have better interior defenders. He didn't play the greatest of competition. Yeah, Gonzaga played some tough teams, but their conference isn't the greatest. And then defensively, he is a pretty good defender. Nice shot blocker, nice rebounder, but I don't think he has the mobility or the versatility to go to the perimeter. Maybe he has the chance to, and I think defensively is where he's going to have his most value. However, I just think he's overrated and won't be that great in the NBA. Number 8, Eric Paschall. One sentence, catch and shoot. That man can let it fly, streaky at times, but fits the modern NBA well. Number 9, Jalen Ward out of Wake Forest. I like his ceiling. I think he has nice athletic potential. That's about it. And then number 10, Iggy Brazkaitis out of Michigan. Yes, Dedrick Lawson is not in my top 10. Get over it. I was tempted to put him there. I wanted to be a biased Jayhawk fan, and it's close between him and Iggy. But I think Iggy has more potential. He had a solid year at Michigan, and I think he could be a nice flyer in round 2. Last but not least, we have the center position. Definitely one of the weaker ones in this draft class. It isn't super deep. There are some talented late first round guys, but outside of Bol Bol, there's no one who I'd probably taken the lottery. Speaking of Bol Bol, he's my number 1 center. I absolutely love Bol Bol. I was tempted to put him as my sleeper, but everyone knows him, so I figured that sort of defeats the purpose of a sleeper, and I think Bol Bol is worth a top 5 selection. Yes, there are a ton of question marks about him. The durability concern is there, as he is very slim for his size. He needs to bulk up. He's had numerous injury issues in his basketball career. However, the skill set is there. Phenomenal offensive player. Over 50% from 3 this year. Yeah, that's only in like 10 games, but that's a much larger sample size than Darius Garland. And Bol Bol, very good offensive player, can hit the 3 ball. Defensively, he needs work. At 7'2", you need to be grabbing more than 9 rebounds a game, and I think if he bulks up, gets stronger, gets better at boxing out the other players, I think he can become a better rebounder, and bulking up is definitely something that he can do. So overall, I think he is worth the risk. He is a huge risk, but I think he has a chance to be great. Now, my number 2 center in this class, he is my sleeper for the position, Goga Bitadze from the Republic of Georgia. And I really like him offensively. He's a little bit raw, especially defensively. He has a long way to go defensively. However, I do like him offensively, as he can shoot the mid-range. He's working on his three-point shot, solid scorer, and I think he's someone who can be a fringe lottery guy. Number 3, out of Florida State, Mfiondu Kabengele, as his name has been soaring big boards the past couple of weeks, including mine, as he was very underused at Florida State. I almost just said Florida. He was very underused at Florida State, and the talent is there. He showed that at the Combine. Very athletic, can hit a jumper, and he is a very solid two-way player, can grab boards, solid inside defender, and I think he's someone who can make a team better. Number 4, Jackson Hayes out of Texas. He is definitely overhyped. Not as overhyped as Brandon Clark, but I still am not huge on him. Jackson Hayes is a giant question mark. He has durability concerns as well, like Bol Bol, but not as extreme as Bol Bol, but there are still concerns, and the production is nowhere near as good as Bol Bol. He only put up 10 and 5. Yes, he was a great defender, and yeah, I know I've been undervaluing Brandon Clark and Jackson Hayes because they're not good offensive players and they're great on defense. I promise I'm not undervaluing defense. I just don't think they fit the modern NBA well. Back to my point. Jackson Hayes is a really solid defender, can block shots. He's pretty versatile. He can grab boards. Offensively, he's a little bit concerning. Only 10 points a game, cannot shoot. And when I said grab boards, he actually is not a great rebounder. He only put up like 5 a game, so yeah, he's not a great rebounder, and he has some work to do there. Number 5, I have Bruno Fernando out of Maryland, as I think Fernando's a solid prospect, solid inside player. I'm not going to put him higher than Jackson Hayes because I don't think he has the athletic ceiling that someone like Jackson Hayes has, but I don't think he's too much worse. Number 6, Nick Claxton out of Georgia, same thing. Very good inside player on both ends of the floor. Not a great shooter, not a great fit for the modern NBA, at least offensively. I'm not going to put him lower than Jackson Hayes. I think those 3 guys are sort of interchangeable. Number 7, Naz Reid. I think he's a little bit more raw. I think he has the most offensive potential. Showed a little bit of potential with a jump shot. Not a great shooter, but at least he's showing signs of shooting the basketball. Really nice rebounder, and I do think he has a nice ceiling. Number 8, Jontay Porter, the brother of Michael Porter Jr., and these two have similar concerns, and that's durability. Michael Porter did not play as a freshman for Missouri. Jontay Porter tore his ACL twice, did not play at all this past season, and that knee is a big concern, and if it weren't for his ACL tear, he would probably be the number 2 center in this class. His knee is the only reason why he's number 8. Really nice jump shot, stretch 5, he can play the 4 as well, and I think if he can stay healthy, he'll be a really good player. Number 9, Daniel Gafford out of Arkansas. Definitely did not do himself a favor by staying in school another year. I originally had him as a top 10 prospect, headed in this draft class, my number 1 sophomore at the beginning of this season. That didn't really work out. I have him as a second-round guy now. Can't really shoot. Not a great fit for the modern NBA. And then number 10, Taco Fall. He does not seem like a great NBA prospect, but he's 7'6", and I think having someone at 7'6", he can be a really good shot blocker, can prevent easy shots in the lane. He made Zion Williamson struggle in the tournament, and while he's not a great offensive player, he's not the most mobile, he's not the most technique, I think his height can make him a really useful player, especially defensively. Here is my official top 60 players big board in this draft class. I'm going to go into detail the guys who I did not talk about, guys who did not make top 10 in their respective positions. The guys who I did already talk about, I will not go into detail with. Number 1, Zion Williamson. Number 2, RJ Barrett. It was a very tough choice choosing between him and Morant. I think it could go either way with those two. Most people think Morant. I'm going to give the edge to Barrett. I think he has a tad bit more upside. Ja Morant, Bol Bol, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, Kobe White, Jarrett Culver, Sekou Doumbouya, Darius Garland rounds out the top 10, Romeo Langford, PJ Washington, Rui Hachimura, and Kevin Porter Jr. rounds out the lottery. Goga Bitadze, Nasir Little, Talen Horton-Tucker, Tyler Hero, Mfiondu Kabengele, KZ Okpala, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Keldon Johnson, Jackson Hayes, Kyle Guy, Darius Bazley, Bruno Fernando, Lucas Samanic, Cameron Johnson, Grant Williams, and Matisse Thybulle rounds out my top 30 guys who I think should be first-rounders. And then for the second round, Nicholas Claxton, Brandon Clark, Naz Reid, Eric Paschall, Jonte Porter, Jordan Bone, Carson Edwards, Miye Oni, Isaiah Roby, Ty Jerome, Lou Gentz Dort, Daniel Gafford, Admiral Schofield, Jalen Horde, Lewis King out of Oregon at number 45. Did not make top 10 for small forwards. It was a little bit hard leaving him out. I really like his upside, and he really improved throughout the season for the Ducks. Shamorai Ponds, Taco Fall, Jalen LeQuay, Iggy Brazkaitis, Dedrick Lawson out of Kansas, Rock Chalk, basically carried the Jayhawks, has a nice jump shot, but he's not the best defender, and I don't know about his fit in the modern NBA. Terrence Mann out of Florida State, very athletic. I think he can be a solid 3-and-D guy as well. Terrence Davis out of Ole Miss. I think he can also be a nice 3-and-D guy, very efficient scorer. Deividas Sirvydis, I believe, out from Lithuania, I want to say, as he's a solid international prospect, pretty athletic, high-volume shooter. Joshua Obiisi out of Germany, talented combo guard. Dylan Windler from Belmont, 20-and-10 guy, pretty solid scorer, and he can grab the boards. Chuma Okeke out of Auburn, he's the one who tore his ACL during the NCAA tournament. He basically carried their team towards the end, and people say he's a lottery talent. I definitely do not think he's a lottery talent. Plus, coming with an ACL tear, he's going to be at number 56. Number 7, Brian Bowen. He was originally supposed to go to Louisville, but then him and Rick Pitino got caught, part of the big recruiting scandal. Rick Pitino lost his job because of it. I think Brian Bowen does have nice potential, but is pretty raw. Number 58, Jalen McDaniels from San Diego State. Inconsistent, but he can be a solid 3-and-D guy. At 59, Yovel Zuzman from Israel. Very solid player. He contributed at a high level in his league. And then number 60, Jordan Poole from Michigan. Very athletic. As a freshman, he hit that big shot in the tournament against Houston a couple years ago. Had he not made that shot, Michigan would have lost him around in 32. And they eventually made the championship before losing to Villanova. And I had Michigan making the Final Four that year, so thank you, Jordan Poole. That'll end the video. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? On Thursday, I will upload my final mock draft, 2 rounds with trades, and have a good one.